When people think about the fall of Rome, they imagine barbarians storming the gates, legions collapsing, or emperors poisoned in marble palaces. But empires don't crumble only from outside attack. They rot from within. And one of the most corrosive forces is always money. Rome didn't just fall because of invasions or corruption. It fell because its currency collapsed. And the lessons from that collapse still apply to every modern economy that thinks it can play games with money and get away with it. Let's set the stage. For centuries, Rome's economic backbone was the silver denarius. First minted around 21 BC, it was nearly pure silver, trusted across the empire and beyond. Roman soldiers were paid in it, merchants demanded it, ordinary citizens stored their wealth in it. The denarius wasn't just money, it was confidence in metal form. The empire's power and the coin's value were one and the same. But running an empire is expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts built, wars financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was stretched thin, defending borders against Germanic tribes, Parthians in the east, and unrest within. Tax revenues couldn't keep pace with military costs. So emperors turned to an age-old trick: debasement. Instead of raising taxes, always unpopular, they reduced the silver content of the denarius. The numbers tell the story. Under Augustus, at the dawn of the empire, the denarius was about 95% silver. By the reign of Caracalla in the early 3rd century, it had dropped to 50%. By Gallienus's time in the mid-3rd century, less than 5%. A coin once made of solid metal had become a bronze disc coated with silver wash. The people could see and feel the difference. Inflation followed. Prices rose because money was no longer anchored to real value. A measure of wheat that once cost 1 denarius now cost dozens. This wasn't abstract economics. It destroyed lives. Soldiers demanded higher pay. Merchants refused debased coins, turning to barter or gold. Local economies reverted to direct trade because money had lost trust. And the more confidence eroded, the more emperors debased the coinage, hoping volume would replace value. It was a vicious cycle, one that has repeated throughout history. The crisis peaked during the 3rd century crisis, 235 to 284 AD. Rome endured 50 years of chaos, invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors rose and fell in months, many assassinated. Behind the political drama lay a broken financial system. Taxes were demanded in worthless coins. Farmers abandoned their lands. Trade networks fractured. The government tried desperate measures, price controls, forced labor, but nothing worked. One emperor, Diocletian, tried to stop the bleeding. In 301 AD, he issued the edict on maximum prices, fixing the cost of over 1,000 goods and services, with death for violators. It was a disaster. Prices can't be controlled by decree when the money itself is worthless. The black market exploded, official trade collapsed. People learned that the law can't make a broken coin whole. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius. Constantine the Great introduced the solidus, a gold coin of consistent purity, around 312 AD. It restored some stability and lasted for centuries in the Eastern or Byzantine Empire. But by then, the West was already fatally weakened. The denarius's debasement had hollowed out Rome's economic core. Armies disintegrated, trade vanished, and trust was gone. Rome's fall wasn't a single event. It was a long unraveling. Currency collapse was one of its sharpest threads. The destruction of money is the destruction of empires. Rome thought it could trick its people with coins that looked the same but held less real value. Modern governments do the same by printing paper, manipulating interest rates, and inflating away debt. The result never changes. The people pay the price, wealth is destroyed, and trust collapses. History didn't stop teaching after Rome. After World War I, Germany repeated the pattern. Facing crushing reparations, it printed marks to pay debts. By 1923, hyperinflation raged. A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark before the war cost 200 billion marks. People hauled wages home in wheelbarrows. Pensioners starved as savings vanished. Money became meaningless, and despair fueled extremism, paving the road for Hitler. Zimbabwe followed in the 2000s. Land seizures, collapsing production, and rising debts pushed the government to print money. By 2008, inflation hit 89.76 sextillion %. Prices doubled daily. Shops couldn't change tags fast enough. Eventually, Zimbabwe abandoned its currency altogether, turning to US dollars and South African rand. The same illusion repeated. governments believing they could cheat reality. And the people suffered. Even in developed economies, the Roman pattern persists. In 1971, President Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard, severing its last tangible anchor. The dollar became fiat, backed only by trust. Debt exploded, money supply expanded, and inflation became a constant. A dollar in 1971 buys what costs over $6 today. The coins and bills look the same, but the value has been hollowed out. Governments disguise inflation as growth. They call rising wages prosperity, even when costs rise faster. They label debt as investment. They point to stock markets as proof of wealth, though most citizens own little or none. Like the Roman emperors, they pretend nothing has changed while quietly draining every paycheck. The modern empire of debt. What makes today's danger unique is scale. Rome's collapse was imperial. Weimar's was national. Zimbabwe's was local. But today, the entire world runs on fiat currencies, massive debt, and central banks printing trillions at the first sign of trouble. The next collapse won't stop at one border. It will echo across the globe. And as always, it won't be the elites with assets who suffer. It will be the millions living on salaries, pensions, and savings in fragile money. 3 lessons from Rome. 1. Inflation is not an accident. It's policy. The silent tax that has broken empires for 2,000 years. 2. Real wealth isn't paper or digits. It's land, skills, productive businesses, and tangible assets. 3. Stability is never permanent. Romans in the 1st century, Germans in 1913, Zimbabweans in the 1980s, all believed their money was secure. All were wrong. When money stops being real, society itself unravels. Contracts fail, trade breaks down, armies dissolve, governments lose legitimacy. The barbarians at the gate may finish the job, but the real killer is always inside the treasury. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. The Roman currency crisis wasn't just about bad emperors or greedy elites. It was about the fragility of money itself when abused by power. And that fragility has never gone away. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe, because history still has the answers.